welcome to Beyond the Fourth Wall. And I'm 𝗕𝗲𝗶𝗀𝗶𝗲, and this is...
I'm Philip Loyal.
We're the co-artistic directors of Fourth Wall Theater. And tonight our guest is Kenn McLaughlin, the artistic director of Stages Theater. Thank you for coming, Kenn. We're so happy to have you.
I am delighted to be here, and I'm just, we don't spend enough time talking together. Like, that's what's in my head. Like, just having a 10-minute conversation with you, you see how fast I'm talking and how excited I am to spend just a little bit of time talking with you guys. So if I talk a little fast, everybody, it's just because my heart is beating fast because I just adore these two human beings so much. So thank you for inviting me.
Well, that's good. Well, you and I can have a little speed talk contest because I tend to be a fast talker too. Well, I'm so happy here, and we adore you too, and we're so grateful that you made time for us. We'd love to hear a little bit about what's going on with Stages. Where are you at? We know you have some programming running. Why don't you let everybody know what that is? And I'm sure Catherine will post it for everybody so that they can take a look. But tell us what's happening.
It's so interesting, Kim, a lot. In fact, I literally zoomed back home from, tonight is the opening of our 𝗕𝗲𝗆𝗀𝗆𝗃 festival. So we had our kickoff opening at 6:30 tonight. And that is a festival that celebrates Texas-based and Texas-born Latinx artists, features 4 readings of brand new plays, features kind of an anchor play that runs throughout the series, which in this season is Candace 𝗕𝗲𝗆𝗍𝗔's play called Fatherland, which is a multimedia piece, just a breathtaking piece that Eboni Bell directed. And then a piece called 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗏's Legend of the Bluebonnet, which is a co-production with 𝗕𝗲𝗄𝗃𝗏𝗃 and the Indigenous Cultures Institute, and was originally commissioned by the Dallas Children's Theater. So there's youth programming, there is Houston-based artist multimedia programming, and then there will be 4 play readings over the next 2 weekends. So that just kicked off tonight, and then we're in production right now, filming away for our second studio sessions, which were the 6 weeks of concerts we did in the fall, and our audience responded so well to those that we brought it back, so we're doing that. And then we've got Sisters Catechism coming back and closing the season with Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill, which Rachel Dixon from the ensemble will be directing. So we're, it's such a weird time, you guys know. I mean, this pandemic and this, how do we produce theater? But we've been forging ahead and just saying, well, this is what it is, and we're going to keep doing it. And like anything else, either people are going to respond or they're not. But we're going to give it our darndest shot to make that connection, so that's kind of been our been our path.
Well, I think that's great. And I think what's important is that every theater finds what they can feel passionate about and what they enjoy, especially in a time when it's difficult emotionally and personally, that if you're an artist or you're a leader, that you go, well, what do we love and what makes us feel good and how do we feel productive? Because you don't want to make yourself feel worse because you feel like you have to do something. And so when you support your own community and you support the things that you feel passionate about, you're going to have fun and hopefully people respond. But if they don't, you still enjoyed what you did. And that's really what matters.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys feel this, but I definitely, there's some days where I literally feel like I'm trying not to look at the hole in my heart, because it feels like I'm not in a room. Yeah. There's no actors in front of me. For 30 years of my life, I've been in rooms where I've been surrounded by actors and struggling to make this authentic thing happen, right? And we haven't done that for a whole year. Yeah. And the sense of loneliness, of sadness about not doing that is palpable. Yes. And there's times where I can't believe I'm talking about it because it's like I don't want to, that still has to sit there until we can get back together, and I have to manage that. But on the other side of it, I just think that there's been these crazy opportunities that surprised us, certainly surprised me in terms of growing capacity in artists, especially our staff. There wasn't a lot of opportunity to reach so far beyond that, but to challenge the staff and as many artists as we could to think and work in new ways and to kind of build up different muscles. That ended up being an amazing gift. And I don't ever want to make a movie again. We made a movie and that was the hardest freaking thing I've ever done in my life. I just don't want to do it again. I had a fantasy. I always had this fantasy. Film, oh no, that is, I don't know how anybody does it. And when we had finished the shoot, which was 4 weeks, this was for the panto. I was sitting with Ryan 𝗕𝗏𝗀𝗏, the actor who had done it, and I said, "Did you say every line in the script? I don't believe you said every line in the script. I don't think, because we shot it out of order and it was little tiny bits." And I'm like, we missed something. We have to go through every line to make sure it was said on film, and it was, but it didn't feel like that. And the emotional arc didn't feel like that. And it doesn't, it's just, and it's actually mentally exhausting to try and stay at a particular, like you're at this moment of the play and you've got to keep that reality going. But none of this that happened before is happening. It's just weird. Oh, I hated it. At the end of the day, Leslie Swackhammer was brilliant, and Peter Ton, who directed it, they were brilliant. But my emotional experience of it was just so radically different.
Yeah, I mean, Philip and I relate to that. I'm gonna let him say something too, but we're not real jump on the bandwagon of making the films. We're like, I'm just gonna let this hole in my heart be here a little. And we like the interview and the personal reactions we have here. And we do a script club with our donors where we talk about scripts like a book club. We have some things we do that we love because they feel more personal and interactive. But the movie thing, we just get a little sad. We're like we're not in the room. There's not the creativity of discovery as much because you're just trying to shoot those shots and do it. So yeah, and I can let Philip speak for himself too about that, but I'm with you, Ken. It's tough.
Yeah. I'd like to talk a little bit, Ken. I was trying to remember when you came to Houston to stages, and I can't remember. It was right around the time I came to Houston in 2001. I know that. But my point is, however long it's been, you have, I can't think of a theater that has transformed from what it was when you came to what it is now in Houston. Obviously, in size of budget, in venue, in size of staff, and probably a whole bunch of other things. Well, your mission statement changed, I believe. Your vision statement probably changed, and certainly the work that you do has changed. So, what I want to know is, what does it feel like to you to have accomplished that? And do you ever look back and go, I've done enough? Or is it like always looking forward going, we got to get here, or something along those lines?
Wow, that's a big question. I want to start when did I come to Houston? And I have a quick story of it. I'm going to get to your question. But you and I came, we did come to Houston at the exact same time. And I came in essentially July of 2001. But one of the very first things that happened when I came to Houston, I think I told you this years ago, Philip, was my dear friend, James Bundy, who is he was my mentor at Great Lakes, sent me a note when he found out that you were in Houston. And he said, Ken, there's this great guy in Houston. You've got to meet him. His name is 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗏. And it was right when I got to Houston, said so. And so your name was like literally right with me as I arrived in Houston. And then I think it was, I don't know, maybe a week later, I'm signing contracts for a show called The Pavilion, and there was your name. And so I'm like, okay, well, this guy's it's inevitable. This guy's going to be a part of my life. And then we met shortly thereafter. So you and I have had a long link. And then, I was thinking today about the fact that you are the first artistic, I Am My Own Wife is the first full artistic project I did when I took over as artistic director. Everything else had been set before me, except I Am My Own Wife. And so, we put that together.
Wow.
And that was it. That was the first thing. And the co-production, all of that. I mean, that was the launch of the next part of my career. And I, looking at the whole, it's such a powerful question you've asked. I'm really blessed. I mean, that is, I don't throw that word around lightly. I mean, it's how it feels to me. Throughout the time that I've been here in Houston, I have been supported by incredible board members. I've worked, as you guys know, so many of the stage staff have been with me right alongside, we've worked alongside each other for 20 years. Lisa Bond and Todd Molesky and Josh Morrison and Jody Bobrovsky and Renee Rodriguez. I mean, I can keep going, right? And forgive me, all of you who I didn't name. But we've been together for 20 years, and because and there's board members who have renewed their terms and stayed with us. There's such a sense of what what else can we do? What more needs to be done in the whole team? That it always feels unfinished. Even now with the building of the 𝗕𝗲𝗄𝗃, it still feels like now what do we do? Now what? And so, you know, I don't, accomplishment, you know, I'm sure you guys can relate to this. Like, you know, you look at your career as an artist and there's things that the minute you think of them, you go, oh, that was that, you know, that was the thing, right? But as a whole with the institution, I'm just, the greatest accomplishment is I'm in a place in my life where I still go to work every day with joy in my heart. Yeah. And I think, well, you know, something must be going right around here that after all this time, that's still my experience. But there's still stuff to do. But yeah, I tried to capture as many things that were in that question as I could.
Well, I think it's interesting too, you know, that you signed your first contract at Stages with him, with Philip for Pavilion. My first professional acting job you gave me with Speech and Debate.
In Houston.
Look at that. See how close we are?
Oh my gosh.
Family.
Talk about the way those strings go. Speech and Debate is one of those ones, like, you know, that's one of those ones when you say, that's one of those ones in my heart. I'm so proud of that show.
That was a great show.
That was such a great show. And for us, you know, for you and I in the room and those 3 students,
kids, yeah,
you know, watching them wrestle with that text and then deliver it the way they did. I mean, I remember sometimes you and I just kind of look at each other across the room and just kind of smiling like, yeah, there's that, you know? Yeah. So look at that.
I remember watching you and, you know, and I was still an acting teacher at that time, and watching how patient and wonderful you were with them and how much you were finding your voice. That was an early time for you, and you were so good with them. And I remember watching, just knowing how passionate you were about education and kids, just by the way you were so determined to figure out how to talk to them, figure out how to support them. And, you know, and I knew at points I'd sit up in the top because I was only in the first scene and the last scene, and I would watch and I could just tell you were trying so hard to find the right thing to say. And that's a gift that you're like, I'm going to find the right thing to say. And as a teacher, I remember developing my own voice going, each person's different. What's the right thing to say to this person and the right thing to say to that person? And that's important, that you understand you have to figure that out. Some people don't care to figure that out. They're like, you figure me out. And you don't do that.
But you also, I mean, you know, you trained up as an actor. So, you know, and we all did. All 3 of us trained up as actors, right? So, you know, one of our things that was drilled into our heads is meet the moment, right? Or kind of, you know, live right here with what's coming at you, right? That's kind of the primary thing that you're being trained to do as an actor. And, you know, sometimes when I think about even the pandemic, I think, thank God I was trained as an actor because that skill, that kind of thing that's drilled into my core about this is it. I can only deal with what's coming at me. You know, everything else, I can study all of that. I get that already, but the only way I can live is this that's coming at me, has really been helpful in this.
That's really good advice. People listen to that. That's good advice. That's a good thing to remember. Yeah. No, you're right. And
well, so Kim, Speech and Debate was before you guys started? Was that so? That was before you guys started?
Yeah. That was right before Almost Maine, I believe.
It was about that time, right? Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, but I think it was right before Almost Maine, or it was right after. But you know, that Almost Maine was a Brave Dog, and that would have been us just renting your space. You know, we just did a deal with you guys to do it in the space, but I believe they were the other way. I believe it was Speech and Debate, and then you, because I think I was still in college in Speech and Debate. Yeah, I think I was still over at U of H finishing my degree.
Catherine reminds us in the chat that Speech and Debate was in March of 2010. So it was
March of 2000. Oh, so we were, Brave Dog was February. So I was right before.
And then my memory is that there was one step with us before that where you did your one-person show.
Yes.
Oh, I did do that for you.
We did the one-person show at Stages.
Conversations about that.
And then
night thing with that. We just did that one night.
Yeah. So that was, I mean, that was how that started rolling out around that time as well.
Well,
and
yeah,
that was
talking about things. Yeah.
It's interesting in the, you know, the history of Stages moment, like we were building up. I took over as in both heads around 2006, 2007. We did I Am My Own Wife. I think that was 2007 then. And, you know, and then we started getting some momentum, and we had this thing that we were going to do this incredible musical on breast cancer. That was actually a really interesting piece. And, you know, we had all this energy going, and then Harvey hit, and it really knocked us for a loop, you know, and it knocked us financially in an enormous way for a loop. And there was that period of recovery after Harvey, you know, around 8 and 9 up until 10 was just, it was just hideous. It was hideous. And then 2010 rolls around and we produce this little thing called the Marvelous Wonderettes. And suddenly it's like, you know, again, the mining metaphor is completely apt. You just happen away with your little pick and suddenly you strike gold and you're like, oh, and you don't even know it's gold. And then suddenly there's all this gold.
Right.
And, you know, I really do. I point to that production. It was a beautiful production of a very sweet show, but it almost was like there were so many people who didn't even know who we were. Like that, you know, it ran for a year, it was sold out for a year, and there were almost a year. And that was just, that's how many people showed up to find out what we were doing, found out what we were doing. You know, it literally is, I always say it was an entirely different world before the Wonderettes and after the Wonderettes. It was just an entirely different world.
Yeah, sure. It's amazing how something can do that. And a lot of times it's not the thing you would have predicted. You know, like, I would have never picked that show to be the one that makes us, you know, puts us on the map. We've had a few of those too that we're like, what? That one? Why is that one selling out? You know, very interesting. Yeah. So
Kenn, I think what I was getting at with my huge question was that I sort of wanted to talk about how stages went from what it was when you came to today being a leader in the Houston community, in theater community, in such a big way. There are several ways that I see this happening. One thing, there's leadership changes that have happened at the Alley and Tuts, which have benefited us all in this way, because the leadership there now believes that we should talk to each other.
Who knew?
You know, before we went live here, you and I were talking about an artistic directors meeting that happens regularly, which to me is just heaven. And, you know, you are an enthusiastic, you take part in that enthusiastically, which is amazing. And then the other thing that comes to mind immediately is, and I'm not even talking about building a venue that is going to benefit the entire community in the Gordy. We can talk about that later too. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that Stages has engaged in some EDI, anti-racism training, and has brought it to the theater and artistic community in Houston at large. Kim and I are both taking part currently. And I just wanted everyone out here to know that it is a huge boon to our community and has changed my life. I know Kim feels this way, and we were talking about it a little bit. I know it's changed your life. So I just wanted to say thank you again for bringing it to us. And I'd like to let you talk a little bit about how you guys came to it at Stages and why you wanted it to bring it to the larger community.
Well, thanks for your kind words about that work as well, Philip. I just think, you know, as we were talking earlier too, you as an organization, you claim a set of values and you say, we believe in these things, and we do believe in these things. And one of those things that organizations across this country, including Stages, have said for a very long time is we believe in diversity. And then, and we're working on diversity. And then you look at our audiences or our board or the teams that we're putting together, and we are not operationalizing, we had not been operationalizing that in the way that had any real meaning. And so, we engaged an amazing group of human beings to work with us in a company called Art Equity, and started on a journey now almost 5 years ago to really learn how to look at ourselves and say, oh, you haven't even begun to try to do this thing. And to do that without a sense of having failed, but to understand the constructs that have allowed it to occur, and to understand how much power I have or anyone has to make change, and to make legitimate change. I mean, I honestly believe, I really believe in my heart that the human beings really do share a goal of this diverse, full human community. Like that's why you go to the theater. Like that's what we want, and we want to hear and share in legitimate ways stories, not to be cultural tourists, but to be active, engaged citizens in each other's lives. You know, we want that, and that takes real work, and that takes a rethinking about the way your whole community works and the way you think about your community and who you are as a white person of amazing privilege. You know, naming and learning how to name without all the other stuff that goes with it, right? So we've been on that journey, and you know, and to name that, here we are, 3 white people having this conversation, right? You know, to recognize how different it is a conversation for our BIPOC friends and peers, how much more painful and traumatizing those conversations can be, and how we have to learn to have appropriate conversations for what's right for all of us. And so all these kind of learnings that we've been rolling out, there was a moment about 2 years, and so we do all a sense of power sharing within our staff, a whole lot of consensus building and consensus conversations in the staff. And there was a moment where we just thought, this is really special. Something's happening for us that's that just feels right. And we want more people to just know what this is, to know this change is happening. And so the opportunity to set in motion the community cohort that you referenced, Philip, it was kind of a no-brainer for us. But what I think I'm so in awe of is not only how many members of our Houston community are a part of that cohort. I think it's 40 plus. I think it's like 46 or something. Yep. And how diverse it is. I mean, it is people from all over the place and across the spectrum in that group, and what that group is going to be able to do for our community as a whole, as the group continues to come together and go back into the community and lean into hard conversations about race in America and anti-racism work. And so I don't know, it is when I think of things that I will look back on in my whole life and say that I'm really happy that I was part of that, that's going to be one of the biggest ones. Because I do, from my experience for 20 years, relative to the base of your question, Philip, is this is one of the most important transformative things that I've seen happening in the Houston arts community in terms of the level of the conversation about about race and diversity and inclusion, but also the courage of the cohort to engage in really hard conversations, and the special courage of our BIPOC community members who are stepping up and leading in amazing ways as well, in ways that they may not ever have been allowed or encouraged to do. And that's not us. They've always been there. Right. But I think finding the space where we understand, respect, and know, and those of us ourselves, like we decenter ourselves and allow something else to happen.
Well, speaking of that, you've actually made a hire on your staff, if I'm not wrong, in this direction. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would love to, as a matter of fact.
I was hoping you would.
Well, you know, and my mind is going fast because there's also, when I think about success, I also think about Mark Folks, and I think about that, and so that's locked in my mind a little bit, because he's incredibly this bittersweet moment of Mark leaving, and we're going to talk about that, and but Eboni coming literally happened at exactly the same time. So when that public announcement was made, it was exactly as I lived it. I was on the phone with Mark and told him, you know, the choice we were making, because it's Eboni reports to me, so I was the hiring manager. And then he was like, absolutely, and do you have time to talk? It literally, so it was that, and that came to me on that Friday morning. But first on the side of celebration. So Eboni Bell, a lot of our audience members know Eboni because she was our house manager for such a long period of time. So the house manager, as you guys know, becomes your public face. Like that's who all of your subscribers know. That's the person who is solving their problems and helping them have their seats and listening about how cold it is in the theaters and in the old theaters, not the new ones. And so Eboni had those relationships, moved into the events management position for us, and was doing just amazing work and how things happened in our building. Really set up some amazing protocols for the new building, which of course was only open for 7 weeks. And then as a true leader and as a truly strong Black woman, leading fearlessly and never letting us just never letting us get away with saying, oh, this is enough. No, it's not. You know, Eboni is a warrior, and it aligned wholly with the values of Stages, which is, if we want to get to an inclusive community, we're going to have to do these things. We have to make these choices. We have to think about how this is happening. And so she was really an amazing choice. But I will say, and I'm going to boast on her for a minute here. We did run a full national search. The search went on for 4 months. We had candidates from all over the country, remarkable candidates. And we have, we work very hard to keep bias out of our system. So there's layers that prevent that kind of bias. And Eboni, earned that position through a 4-month process, through a national search project process. And I'm not only thrilled by that, but I think it's really healthy for us and for the community. She's a real leader. She's a real rising leader, and I'm in awe of her. So yeah, thank you for asking. And I think she's in your I think you guys have experienced her in the cohort, and you see how fearless she is about about just saying, this is my lived experience. And when when a young Black woman talks about her experience of oppression, it's very hard to hear, but Eboni shares it with such grace and such truth that there's something really world changing about the way she does her work. And so I'm thrilled that she's part of the team.
I'm sorry.
Also, I'm just going to say, she's in my particular individual group in the cohort. And I'll just have to say, to give her another little kudos, she is an amazing facilitator without even trying to be, because we're not really facilitator in that group. It's everybody's equal, but she's so wonderfully in tune with being, an ear and a support to every person and helping, because a lot of us are bumbling idiots right now, which is great. And we're embracing being bumbling idiots so that we're truthful and so that we're not afraid. And we don't take up too much space if we're white, but we make sure we don't also not talk, because we want to balance that. And she's so great at helping people know, when they feel bad or they feel good or they're doing whatever. She's just so wonderful with everyone, I have to say. So I think she's a real gift to our community, just in my mild little bit of experience I've had in my cohort group with her. So I'm very excited to see her work in the community. So thanks for hiring her.
Can you tell us exactly what her job is to be at Stages? For anyone who doesn't know Eboni or what you've done, I think it's important to name what that job is actually supposed to be.
So it's really interesting that, this work on equity, diversity, inclusion is an ongoing process. It's just about continuing to build fullness in your community, right? And so that's never ending. That's going to go on forever. And issues, all the kind of isms that separate us, whatever those are, and every one of us can point to something where most of us, if you are a person, and you guys did social location, all this stuff, if your social location puts you in a particular place of power, it is strange to say that, but you also have the powers that you hold in your social location allow you to leverage goodness in the world. That's the point, and so equity and diversity and inclusion really is about creating access and fairness and equality and inclusion. Are all voices being heard? Are all voices being considered? We all know that when you have a diverse team of collaborators, the outcomes are stronger because you have input coming at you from so many different sources. This is where not only has this work helped me as a person, but as an artist, because now I understand how little was actually getting to me and how much more full the experience can be when there's a diverse team. And so Eboni's role ultimately is to make sure that we are living up to our best aspiration of this, that our teams are diverse, that our full staff is supported, that they are leaning into, do you have enough diverse perspectives? Is this team put together in a diverse way? How that's working on the artistic side? Does the programming fully reflect the fullness of the Houston community? Or are we leaning into a bias in this particular direction? Are we, what are we doing here? And so her role is to, continue to keep us aware and alert to the environments that are most healthy for a full community. So that's it. And then she also, she's also then responsible for the kind of going out of the inside of stages and the outside of stages. So how do we reach out to communities who haven't accessed us? How do we create legit relationships with communities of color, with communities, the disability community, whatever that community is, who may or may not ever have known that they were welcome in our space. I'm sure you guys have heard this. This is the thing we hear that we really learned about is, oh, I didn't know I was welcome there.
Yeah.
And you think you're like, oh, of course you're welcome here. But if you don't feel welcome there, and then you don't go there, right? And so if it is our goal, like you certainly you can create an unwelcoming space. There are spaces I'm sure that attempt to create an unwelcoming space. I think of a particular conspiracy movement right now that I'm sure would not be open to diversity, right? But our values, what we have said is we want this thing, we want this full human community. So that's a lot of work. That's not just something you say and imagine and sort of dream it happen. It's a lot of work to make it happen. And I think that's exciting.
That's really well put. And I think that's an important thing you said, is that we just expect that everybody thinks it's welcoming because we're nice.
Exactly.
So it's like, well, what does that mean to someone who doesn't even understand our community and lives in another community that we don't know anything about? So, and we've made no effort to know anything about necessarily. We just assume that because I'm nice, you should come over here and see that I'm nice. Well, why? That doesn't make any sense. And when you really think about it that way, it's like, okay, so I need to break that down and figure out what that means, and find a cohort of people that help me understand what it means to, infiltrate communities and make communities be, more a team effort instead of separations that don't know each other. Yeah. And I didn't really understand that.
Well, is in the theater community in Houston, excepting perhaps at least one theater that doesn't really fit into this, but Stages is the leader in this.
Absolutely.
From what I can tell. Obviously the ensemble theater is they have other problems but this is not their problem, obviously. I haven't thought very much about that. I just started blabbing.
Well,
and there's a perfect example of of one of the tools you get, which is we recognize, you get that tool like, oh, wait a minute, I know my instinct told me to go there, but do I have enough information to go there?
I know what I'm talking about.
That is such a that is part of our white supremacist cultural baggage that we carry as white men. It just is,
Guilty.
And but it's interesting, Philip. It's interesting. I have had conversations. I was in a public forum with Eileen Morse, who is the artistic director of the Ensemble Theater, and it's really interesting to hear Eileen talk about issues of race and divide, especially as a woman who has for a long time run one of the most significant Black theaters in America, and has had the feeling of how little recognition that theater actually has in the community, but also within her own community, and particular challenges that she faces, which are entirely obviously different than the challenges that we face running white theaters. But all theaters are facing challenges toward this goal of this real, it's aspirational, this American regional theater. It really still is an aspiration. It's never realized its fullest potential.
Yeah.
And I think this next generation and generations beyond are pushing us toward the potential of this regional theater, these ideas that actors can live in these communities and thrive, and a diverse body of actors can live in regional communities. And the goal isn't to get back to New York. The goal is to make your community this thriving thing. And you know, that has not been a successful experiment and across the board. And you know, I think we're starting to name that and starting to turn that ship around, and the generation behind us is going to have, you know, is to take a little further down the field than we have.
Yeah.
Well, there's two arms to that problem. The one we're talking about today, which you're doing such a wonderful leadership role in, and also the one that I've been trying to fight for a decade, which is pay. So we have two problems for artists. You know, artists go to New York and LA because they have in Chicago because they have the greatest opportunity to get paid a living wage. And most of the rest of the country, theaters struggle to just keep their doors open and keep an administrative staff that can keep the doors open, and then paying the artists falls so far down on the budget line that it's just such a struggle. So there's a lot of, you know, things that need to be still fought the good fight for theater, and to find leaders like you to take on particular issues and pay. I think Houston has come a long way in pay since I got here, which I'm really thrilled about to see. And more equity artists are getting paid. More people are conscientious of trying to keep people at closer scale, whether they're equity or not. So that's a good thing. I don't want to change the subject, but you're right. And working on all that is really important for the whole country, not just so that we have a more wonderfully, equitable playing field for all kinds of race and diversity and pay all over the country, and people can live wherever they want and be an artist.
Well, Kim, I wouldn't diminish how, you know, Fourth Wall planted their flag in this issue, right? And you know, when you say we're doing this thing, and you did, I mean, you said this is what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to do it. You know, everybody has to take notice and say, you know, and say, okay, well, that and to respect and celebrate that goal. And you know, I would say that you guys really push. You are definitely a reason that Houston has gotten better in these areas.
Well, that means a lot coming from you, and I hope that's true, and I really appreciate that, because you know, I know how much you love artists, and so to say that to artists who fought for it is really meaningful to us, Ken. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you. So, what's your next question, Philip? I saw you wanting to shut me up. No.
I really didn't. I did want to talk about, what I really did want to talk about was, and Ken, you can talk about that if you want. I was curious, one of the things that I saw in a document about equality is, hey, theaters, stop the 6-day work week. And that's something that I think we're going to try when we get back to live rehearsal. Yeah. Maybe people, just so you know, we rehearse for 6 days a week, and some theaters are allowed to perform 6 days a week. Fourth Wall doesn't. I did stages now.
No, we're still 5.
Yeah, and so, you know, but the idea that artists, people of color and white people, to make them work 6 days a week and not have some sort of a weekend is being identified as something that is harmful. And I was curious how you felt about that.
It's so interesting. And Philip, I mean, we'd have to expect, this would have to be an epic, and so, you know, an epic episode of Beyond the Fourth Wall, because you know, you've just glanced toward the We See You White American Theater documents, yeah. Which is, you know, one of the most significant conversations that can be and is going on in the world of theater right now. And we just don't have time to even start to unpack the conversation on that particular document, which is what I have said publicly is I think when theater is studied, you know, remember when we went to our history of theater classes and we learned about blah, 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 you know, Plato, and then we learned, and then there was Brecht, you know, and then there was John Osborne. You know, when theater is studied 100 years from now, it's going to be, and then there was We See You White American Theater, and there are going to be chapters written about how this movement really changed the course of the theater for the better. I honestly believe that in all my heart. And whether or not I agree with everything in that document, I engage with it. I am thrilled by it. I am challenged by it. It is a catalyst for change. And I'm a white person talking about it. A BIPOC person, and especially BIPOC people who wrote it, I'm sure I have different feelings about it, but that's my engagement and experience thus far with it. As far as these certain issues, I think we are getting rid of the 10 out of 12s. Like there's things in there that you know, inside our hearts we've been like, we really shouldn't be doing, you know, like this is killing us, this is grinding everybody's getting, you know, grinding down. But not in a, you know, the way it's framed in a social construct about kind of the health and the humanity of individuals who are carrying, especially BIPOC individuals who are carrying a whole set of other emotional and psychic burdens and traumas that we don't have to carry. And then this work, like you think about how that's layered, and you go, wow, how awful that I would be part of a system that would create that. And then you go back and go, well, I've only ever done that in my career. I've only ever worked texts that go on forever. And you're, you know, those texts where it's 10:45 at night and you're exhausted and you're still doing the last scene and it's just, we've done that our whole careers. And it's like, yeah, no, that should go away. No, that's wrong. You know, there's got to be a way to fix this. And, you know, here's where it becomes interesting. And again, another, you know, you know, I'm going to open a can of worms here, but the union has got to get with us. You know, the union, the actors
Don't get
union.
him started on the union right now. Don't even open that one. We'll be here all night.
You know, but I think we're all union members, right? Kim, are you? Yeah, so we're all union. You know, when I became a producer, I did not continue my membership, but you know, we're all you know, I was an equity actor, and you know, my family is union organizers. My uncle was one of the most powerful Teamster organizers at the turn of the century. So I come from a family of a hardcore union organizing family. And I sometimes think my uncle would be rolling in his grave if he found out the way that this is happening sometimes. That's what I think. I just think that we have to have a conversation where we trust one another. As producers and artist protectors, where we can work together to do what's best for the field, which is what's good for the artists. You know, it's not, it is really not us versus them anymore. I don't believe that. And I recognize the rise to came from us versus them, and especially in a corporate structure, right? But when we're working so hard to dismantle and disrupt structures that are preventing artists, the last thing you want to run into is the buzzsaw of a union saying, no, you cannot switch to a 5-hour work week because you can't do those things or whatever. They're not going to say that. They're going to say you have this many hours. But then the other challenge for us is, which all goes to the pay thing, that actors also have other jobs, so they can rehearse only at this period of time, at least in our community right now. Right. And so these things are all interconnected to create barriers to the kinds of systemic changes we really want. Yeah. Every one of us would thrive by actors working, you know, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. That would be so much better for everyone. And all these issues are interconnected. The pay, which allows actors not to have another job, which, you know, all that stuff is interconnected.
Yeah. You put it really well, and I have great fear that our union is going to stand in not only our way as producers, but our way as members. And I can't fathom why it is. I've heard rumors that I won't repeat because it's, who knows, but why will they stand in our way, on both sides? It's crazy. And yeah, I think that we have to keep having a conversation amongst ourselves, both as members and producers, and see what we can do to help each other, because you're right, it's not producers versus artists anymore. It just, that may still exist a little bit in commercial theater, but in the regional theaters, no.
It has to be, you know, I mean, I think the way, it's interesting how this all ties together, how this is all tied together in my mind. It really has to do with the way power is used, right? Like all the EDI stuff, a lot of this stuff too has to do with the way in which power and authority get used in the structures of power, the kind of traditional structures of power, and thinking in new ways about how power is used and shared. And that requires trust, that requires equity in the system. You know, that requires a sense of, you know, a real relationship between whatever those partners would be, between the union and the producers or whatever. I mean, these are interconnected things, and we as a society are seeing such a change in the way power works and the way in which power can be, you know, yielded and used. And so all these things are kind of swirling, and that's kind of where we are, you know, as an artistic community, as artistic leaders. You know, we're in this swirl right now.
You reminded me that when you talked about power and power sharing, that in our conversation about having you on this show, you mentioned that a job that is traditionally that of the artistic director, picking material to produce, is happening totally differently at stages now. Would you tell us about that?
Yeah. So, and thanks for asking, Philip. There's a funny note about that, by the way. If you recall, when you invited me on, I said, "Hey, maybe it should just be me and Mark, or maybe and then boom, the Mark thing happened, which we're gonna get to. We love you, Mark. Yeah. So about 2 years ago, this rose out of our work with Art Equity, and through this very conversation we're having about power sharing and looking at places in the organization where power was seated in one particular place. And the tradition, of course, in the American Regional Theater is the power of the program sits with the artistic director. And certainly that was true of stages. I mean, you know, I'm the person who got to pick the stuff. And I have a team of people who helps get the scripts to me. And I had an open policy, you know, please send it. So I thought that was really inclusive of everything, you know, let's make sure all the agents are sending me the stuff, and let's make sure I'm getting diverse scripts. And but at the end of the day, it was all through my lens. I was making the choice. Yeah. And when we had the session on, you know, power and power sharing, and I was like, wait a minute, that is a bottleneck, I decided to just open it up to the whole staff. So I sent an email to the staff and I said, anyone on the staff, I don't care if you know, work 2 hours a week in our box office, which is probably the place where, you know, that might happen, or you're an overhire or whatever. If you are engaged in the work of stages as an artist or as a team member, and you have an interest in doing this, come. And a group of people came, and I said, here's what's required of you. You have to read all these plays, you have to do all these things. And so some people self-selected, said, you know what, I don't have the time for that, but I'm an advocate for you. But we ended up in the first year with 11 people. And that was 2 years ago. And 11 of us read the plays. And then we sat around a conference table and said, oh, no. Oh, yes. Oh, you know, and a couple plays like, you know, Knockdown, Drag Out. No, I believe, like people crying, saying, I believe in this play so much. And it was so incredible. So we put the season together, which actually was this named season, and announced it. And our subscriptions were 30% higher than any other season we had ever done.
Wow. Wow.
Ever. So, you know, clearly we had found a formula. And not only that, the entire staff was so excited. So, you know, the tradition of stages was I put a season together and then I would announce it to the staff. You know, I proclaimed to the staff what I had come up with because I'm such a genius, you know. And oh, it was just thrilling to watch people stand up and tell why we're doing this play. You know, watch someone who's on our sales team stand up and say, we're doing cost of living because it's this thing, you know. It's just, you know, it not only does it take the burden off of me of having to hold all of that, it taught me, one, how to just to be, you know, be a little more humble, dude. And two, just how much love and passion there is for theater in the team. And when you release that passion throughout the whole team, there's just so much more passion for the art and for the work. So, you know,
by the way, cost of living I saw in New York, and Martina is a friend of mine, and I almost jumped out of my chair when I saw that on your season. It's one of the best plays I've ever read, and you can ask Philip because I said it when I read it. So
I read it.
kudos to you, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I have to tell you, I had that reaction to that season, Ken.
Yeah, it's well, and you know, you come to the COVID wall. That's one of the heartbreaks about COVID is that's the season, you know, and then boom, we hit the wall, and that all blew up, you know, and so now Philip, the team is now, so I sent out a new invite because the staff had grown and changed. So now the team is, I think 17 members. So it's 17 staff members, and we're working on next season. So we're kind of figuring out what are we gonna save, what are we gonna let go, what are we gonna reach for, and we're doing that. In fact, I have a meeting tomorrow to kind of lock it down.
Oh, that's great.
We have a question in our chat from 𝗕𝗲𝗆𝗶𝗀𝗏, wonderful actor.
Hey, Sally.
At Fourth Wall and all kinds of places around town. But she asks, and this is the burning question that we all have. I have too, but I'm curious what your take is on it. When are we going to have live theater again, Ken?
October. You know what? I think my strategy now is if I say it enough, it's going to come true. That's just, you know, and if everybody out there just says it enough, you know, here's the thing. I mean, there's been so much really positive data about this, that like everybody seems to be pointing to that date. There seems to be some love around the idea that it could happen earlier, but you know, but Fauci has been pretty consistent, you know, and if I had my I Love Fauci shirt on, you know, I would wear it, you know, but he's been really consistent about saying, I really think this is going to happen by October. You know, we have some access to some folks on our board who are really tied into the scientific community, have been working on this. They're like, yeah, that's pretty reasonable, and whatnot. The outlier are these new strains and the vaccine. And I'm at a place in my life where I can't engage in the anxiety producers anymore. I just can't do it. And so I really believe October. Our plan right now at Stages, ultimately, is we're trying to figure out, well, how do we, because we don't want to I don't think any of us want to go back to where the kind of seasons we had where you know, we had announced the season, we had sold it, and then we have to keep coming back to our subscribers and say, well, we're going to pivot to this, we're going to pivot to that. And you know, God bless our team, they did an amazing job on the pivoting. Like you know, we're really a dance company in disguise, apparently. But you know, we don't want to do that again. You know, we want to try and give it our best shot, and I'm sure everyone does, you know, at saying this is what we think it can be. So we're leaning into October. We'll do some other stuff that has community gathering components, probably outside. That's what we're really thinking before that. But
where?
On the lawn of the _𝗘𝗍𝗃.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, so we're looking into stuff that can be out there. We're doing a whole lot of study about how we can be out there and how we can be out there safely, and then get back together by October.
Fantastic. Yeah, we believe at Fourth Wall too that the fall is that's what we're shooting for, and we're going to be a little bit flexible about when in the fall we produce a show, but we'll have one show in the fall. That's our plan for now. So,
yeah.
Well, we only have a few minutes left, and I think we have to ask about the departure of your managing director, Mark Folks, who's been at Stages for, you tell us how long, and
6 years.
what he's meant to Stages, and what kind of an opportunity does his departure give to you?
Yeah, so we end with Kenn crying.
No,
it's all good. No, crying with my true and deep affection for Mark. You know, you think about your journeys in life and you think about these things that have happened in your life, and I think one of the most significant walks that I've had in my life is to walk alongside him in the leadership role. He's one of the most extraordinary arts leaders I've ever known in my entire career, and I've known some doozies, but he is in a class all by himself. And for 6 years, I just felt like I had a dear friend and companion, other side of my brain kind of thing. So when I think of stages soaring for these past 6 years, it is Mark Folks. It is not, I mean, I certainly played a role. But if my brain hadn't gotten attached to Mark Folks' brain, none of this would have happened. And together, I really feel like we were a super team. And so I really do, part of it emotionally feels like someone now is taking a part of my brain away. and now this other thing has to happen. But I'm so, I have to say that my honest visceral response when he told me, my very first response was really real happiness for him. I'm just so happy. And I really am seriously happy for the community, because in that position, he is actually going to have even more power to influence and help the community. And so we are all going to benefit from Mark's ascension through his career. And he's not going anywhere. So none of us are going to lose him as a friend. Right. The opportunity, and I think, and I'm speaking on behalf of the board and the staff, I really am. There is so much love for that man and care for him, and just real joy of what he has led us to. And then the opportunity, of course, is that Mark has led us to such a remarkable plateau. And so our job, our national job posting is like a giant beacon, like who wouldn't want to come work in a brand new paid for $35 million 3 theaters? Who wouldn't want to do that? Who wouldn't want to come work for the company that is leading all the way into EDI? Like he has helped set us up as a company that can draw, and that's again another really good thing for Houston.
A wonderful person will come in, I'm sure. Very exciting.
Yeah, and so it's an opportunity for all of us, and I really look forward to it.
Yeah. I'm so glad he's staying. He's been so kind to me. I mean, we'd have breakfast sit down, and then he'd give me so much great advice. He's so generous to everyone. He would always sit down with anyone, tell them, I'd say, like, how do I do this? What would you do if you were in my position trying to do too many jobs? And he'd be like, well, just do one, do this. And I'd be like, oh, okay. He's the best. He's the best.
Introduced Kim and me to 𝗕𝗲𝗏𝗍 before.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I've forgotten that. Ken, we have only a few minutes, like seriously, 2 minutes left. We're going to say goodbye to you in a minute, and then we'll talk a little bit about what's coming up on Beyond the Fourth Wall. But is there anything you want to say before we go, or any question we haven't asked?
No, no, I want to keep talking, but no. Well, I want to say this, you guys, we can't, we just go off and do these things, but we have to spend more time together. Like that's one of the things that I, we just have to spend more time together. So thank you so much. I'm so grateful that to be invited and to be included. I love your work, Kim. Glass Menagerie was just so spectacular.
Well, Philip directed it too. He's always so lovely to me, and I'm so glad you came, and thank you for seeing that.
I just loved that production so much. And Manny, I love 𝗕𝗲𝗆𝗍, and so
well, maybe we can
you guys are a real gem, and I'm so I'm so glad to be a part of a community that has you guys in it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, we value you too, and thank you for giving me my first professional job.
I can't believe I did that. So that makes me, thank you.
You did. Well, have a wonderful night, and we will get together soon. We will see you soon. Let's make sure we all keep talking. I think it's important. So
this was great. Thank you so much, Ken. So we'll
welcome.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
See you in a live theater sometime soon.
Yes.
Okay.
Take care.
Good night.
Bye. Bye. Well, thank you all for hanging with us. Kim, what's coming up next on Beyond the Fourth Wall?
Catherine's going to share our next lineup. Here we go. We've got some wonderful guests coming up. We've got J.J. Johnston, David Rainey, Jason Nodler and Tamarie Cooper, and Eboni Bell. So get these dates on your calendar. It's every 2 weeks. So our next is March 25th. Is that correct? No, March 11th. March 11th is our next meeting. And then every 2 weeks after that. So we hope you'll join us, and we're excited for all of our guest lineup. And
before we go, I'd like to thank Catherine Dunaway, our amazing support on this show. I guess you'd call her the producer, and we could not do it without her. And thanks again to Kenn McLaughlin for a really wonderful hour. And thank you for watching us.
Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Beyond the Fourth Wall is produced by Fourth Wall Theater Company, Houston's home for extraordinary performances up close. Each guest is paid for their appearance on this series, in accordance with our mission to pay artists a living wage. Follow the links in the video description to support Fourth Wall with a tax-deductible gift, or to subscribe to our upcoming 10th anniversary season.
But I want you to come visit us or come use our house.
Oh my God, please do not. Kim,
Yeah.
done. Oh, in fact,
Why?
we were, you know, we're trying to get, I'm trying to get squeeze some time away. We were really talking about headed out.